easy and it's easy to learn. But here I'd like to mention that the finance can be spread into sort of three stratas or three different divisions. So the basic, I think most of us, quite a lot of is a common sense. And then when you go to the slightly next level of finance, it becomes a little bit complex, and some amount of analytical sort of techniques actually started to flow and starts to flow very naturally in that. And then we go to the third layer, which is actually a really complex layer. I think it has become quite mathematical. It becomes really mathematical and extremely analytical. I actually don't think that most of us practice that layer of finance, at least not in our country, as much as actually it is developed. So here, a little bit background of why I created this course, and I feel very strongly about it. So kindly, pardon me if you don't like some of the statements. This is my thinking, and I don't know whether I told you some of my background. I've been doing teaching for almost 30 years now in the subject matter. I used to work with Citibank for about 15 years. I was head of analytics in India, and then did a lot of analytical work in the Citibank and elsewhere. And I had actually been teaching in many institutes in India and abroad. I also teach artificial intelligence and machine learning apart from finance. And the two areas are actually coming up and getting close and making enormous amount of difference in understanding subject matter or carrying the subject matter of finance into a different domain. Now, what I actually found in my understanding, learning of financial mathematics in Indian academic curriculum is extremely limited. I was teaching in SP Jain in Andheri for some time. I actually did financial modeling, and I found people really got interested in subject matter. But I found some people who actually had enormous difficulty in actually even getting the small concepts easily through them, and it was quite challenging. And then subsequently, actually, I kept understanding what is the issue. See, again, if I go further, you see, the most graduate schools, students go to the college only to get a certificate. This has been my experience with my interaction, and they are just, serious learning is increasingly becoming a challenge in schools, because I don't know how I can really, what reasons can I attribute to some of these reasons, and but I've been interacting with a lot of students lately. I was, during the COVID period, I was stuck in Boston, and I was talking to many students from there, and I found that serious learning is actually missing. Then where would students learn? On the job, or on their own, or through coaching? Now, if you learn on the job, the employers do not want to pay for the learning, for training the employees whom they hire. And that is the reason that 10% of the graduates are only employable. That is because the serious learning has actually not taken place in their academic curriculum or academic institutions. So that's where I think there is a huge problem. I'm not talking about general, the other part of learning also is actually quite limited. And when it comes to mathematics, all those people who learn finance also do very less maths when it comes to finance. When it comes to mathematics or analytical techniques applied to finance, even on the job, this is a huge experience, huge limitations. There is a knowledge gap with supervisors. Many supervisors in the banking services, they have very little idea of what actually is happening in the financial world. Application gap, encouragement gap, and less of senior management support and buying in for use of analytical techniques. So this is all some of the things which actually I feel very strongly, so I thought I'll share with you. And then going further, only places students seem to learn finance in India is an MBA school. Finance major. As students in MBA school come from different backgrounds, if I have had a chance to be interacting with students in IIM Calcutta, Ahmedabad, ISB, Hyderabad. I have also taught in London in the school. Done enormous amount of teaching, and I found that people actually come in MBA, and rightly so, because the management of business is actually, why not? People come from commerce background, arts, science, engineering, law, medicine. A lot of backgrounds are there, and some of these backgrounds, students do not expose themselves to enough mathematics. So as a result, what I've written is mathematical rigor while teaching finance is largely avoided in the class, because people with somewhat less prior background in mathematics, they find it difficult to really absorb some of these concepts which are actually now become mainstream in many ways, or they find it difficult. On the other hand, practical finance needs good understanding and knowledge for better decision making to solve given problems. So again, one of the tasks in finance is decision making, because decision making is quite an important part of all interaction with finance. Also, in order to apply knowledge of computing techniques and computer language is also needed. Now, when you are actually looking at application of mathematics, you are going to not just say you are talking about an equation to be implemented. It has to be implemented through computers. So one has to really understand how the computing really takes place, how to deploy the computer program. So then, natural process of application of financial mathematics is to understand computing and then computer language, so that one can interact with the computer. Both are generally not a part of school curriculum or MBA program, because they don't teach any language. If you have a computer science background, you already know it. But if you come with commerce or arts background, you haven't done a lot of programming, so it's difficult for you to, even if you are mathematically oriented, you find it difficult to apply mathematics. And this is the result of years of running some traditional courses in MBA schools. This needs seriously thinking. So what actually is happening is that the MBA schools, which includes some of the best known schools in our country, they have been running some MBA programs for years together, and same program is running. They are not actually thinking of changing some of these programs, which actually require more analytical rigor, a lot of mathematics, which actually should be part of all finance program, and that's where I thought it's a good idea for me to impart some of these basic mathematical concepts into students and practicing professionals. To emphasize, most financial mathematics is very conceptual and easy to apply. As you will try and see some of these, to create an interest in learning mathematics for better understanding of finance. I also want people to get interested. That's something which actually should happen in the classroom. One of the objectives of going to school or college is that the teacher makes subjects so interesting that students naturally get attracted to that, and then they will
start applying that. So one of the things which actually the teacher must do is to imbibe curiosity
in the students, and once that happens, I think the learning happens, and then the students naturally gets interested in applying themselves or herself in a different way. To encourage need for learning financial mathematics, to create an understanding how use of analytical techniques and mathematics improve the understanding of finance multifold, and to use practical, rich and expanding mathematical tools in solving financial problems easily and efficiently. Now, this is quite interesting actually, because on the other side, when we see algorithmics are actually expanding, a lot of statistical
new techniques have
come, a lot of new ways of solving problems are appearing in the literature, and some of these applications can easily be deployed in solving a lot of financial problems, and if you don't use them,
then
you're not getting an optimal solution to the financial problems which the financial people actually or services people they encounter in day-to-day life. That's why actually I think it's important for us to look at the interdisciplinary area actually. What is the other objective of the course? Try to show that financial mathematics is not difficult to learn, to attempt to make financial more amicable to people sometimes averse to learning it. Now this is important actually. I've seen particularly people with non-science background, they find it a little bit difficult for them. In the classroom when I write some equations on the blackboard, people really find it as that we have come to learn finance and not mathematics here, and that becomes a little bit challenging because I actually don't understand how do you learn finance without mathematics. So that's where actually I emphasize that I think it's important for you to learn some maths to be a good finance services person. And with the proliferation of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and also it is happening in a big way in finance, learning financial mathematics is becoming more relevant, important, and perhaps necessary. Some important aspects of modern finance cannot be done without the use of mathematics. Now this is the important part. The finance actually is no more simple finance or basic finance. It is now getting into a different zone where a lot of algorithms from computer science, computing, from statistics, from other part of the mathematics is actually coming and hitting finance and making a much more sense of what really happens in finance. And so these areas which actually is understanding fixed income instruments, pricing, valuation, risk. For example, all form of derivatives. Derivatives actually are now important part of our businesses, and they are used for hedging, they are used for speculation, they are actually also used for many other applications which actually derivatives are finding at. And every underlying has derivatives. Unfortunately, in our country, the expansion of derivative instruments are not taking place for the simple reason that people actually still think that derivatives is beyond them, and but there are huge applications, good applications of derivatives from the risk management point of view, something which actually is required to be explored. All other forms of financial risk, without the interaction with mathematics, I actually don't think that any aspect of financial risk can be covered. Portfolio management. I give you a simple example. Let's say that I have, $100 million, and I'd like to invest in, let's say, for some reason I've decided 10 stocks. How do I actually distribute this into different stocks? This $100 million to be invested in 10 or 100 stocks. How do I exactly do it? You have to take recourse to financial mathematics or basic statistics. Exactly. So you have to do that, and that's where I think the basic financial mathematics actually come in handy. Algorithmic trading actually is now becoming quite a reality. High frequency trading, medium frequency, low frequency trading, and they are using enormous amount of mathematical tools which actually are deployed to do the trading. Now, finance is quite interdisciplinary. I think and slowly a lot of things are actually coming together. The finance earlier, the finance was considered to be an extension of economics. Part of accounting is there. Statistics and mathematics is part of it. Some aspects of physics has naturally come into the finance. Computer science has obviously come, I think, everywhere. All aspects of life is now filled with computers and computing and integrated circuits and chips and whatever actually you call it. Data science is now coming in a big way. AI and machine learning, which is actually part of management aspects, are also coming in, and some aspects of market psychology. So these are all some of the disciplines which actually are integral parts, some more, some less, are integral part of modern finance. Now, people in finance actually is quite interesting that people who are working in financial services, what background generally they come up from. So I actually look at the industry and I said, okay, let me just
scan
around
around
and
and
see
see
exactly
exactly
what
what background
background
normally
normally
people
people
have
have
to
to
work
work
in
in
financial
financial
services.
services.
And
And
I
I
found
found
very
very
interesting
interesting
actually.
actually. And
Unlike
unlike
some
some
of
of
the
the
services
services
which
which
are
are
actually
actually
very
very
specific
specific
to a
to a
particularly
particularly
qualified
qualified
chartered
chartered
accountant,
accountant.
you
You
must
must
have a
have a
chartered
chartered
accountancy
accountancy
degree.
degree.
If
If
you
you
get
get
an
an
engineering
engineering
job,
job,
you
you
must
must
have an
have an
engineering
engineering
degree.
degree.
And
And
if
if
you
you
want to
want to
become a
become a
doctor
doctor
or a
or a
lawyer,
lawyer,
then you
then you
must
must
have the
have the
relevant
relevant
background to
background to
be
be
able
able
to
to
do
do
that.
that.
But
But
finance is
finance is
one of
one
the
of the
interesting
interesting
subject
subject
where
where
I've
I've
seen
seen
people
people
coming
coming
from
from
various
various
backgrounds
backgrounds
and
and
doing
doing
well in
well in
finance.
finance.
I one
One
time I
time I
was in
was in
Singapore
Singapore
and
and
it's
it's
quite
quite
interesting.
interesting.
So
So
I
I
was
was
attending
attending
one
one
of
of
these
these
seminars
seminars,
and
and
there's a
there's a
lady
lady
who
who
was
was
sitting
sitting
next to
next to
me
me,
and so
so
during the
during the
break
break,
she
she
also
also
worked with
worked with
Citibank. I
Citibank. I
used to
used to
work with
work with
Citibank
Citibank,
and
and
then
then
I
I
asked
asked
her,
her,
and
and
we
we
just
just
started
started
talking
talking, uh,
and I
and I
asked
asked
her
her,
what
what
is
is
your
your
background.
background?
She's
It's
like
quite,
that
when
she
she
was
was
in
in
the
the
risk
risk
management.
management.
You'd be
She'd be
surprised
surprised
that
that,
what she
what she
told
told
me
me
was
was
that
that
she's a
she's a
veterinary
veterinary
doctor.
doctor.
It's
It's
quite
quite
interesting
interesting
actually.
actually.
So
So
this
this
veterinary
veterinary
doctor
doctor
coming
coming
in the
in the
risk
risk
management
management
in
in
finance
finance
and
and
working
working
as a
as a
risk
risk
manager
manager
in
in
Citibank.
Citibank.
It was
It was
quite
quite
interesting
interesting
actually
actually
because
because
this
this
is
is
the
the
only
only
area
area of
of where
where
people
people
can
can
come
come
from
from
different
different
backgrounds
backgrounds
and
and
do
do
really
really
well.
well.
And there
There
are
are
reasons
reasons
because
because
I
I
don't know
don't know
whatever
whatever
reason
reason
actually
actually
you
you
can
can
attribute
attribute
to
to
this
this
particular
particular
phenomena.
phenomena.
It's
It's
quite
quite
interesting
interesting
actually.
actually.
That
That
means
means
it's
it's
not
not
difficult to
difficult to
learn.
learn.
Basic
Basic
finance
finance
almost
almost
it's
it's
a
a
whole
whole
lot of
lot of
common
common
sense.
sense,
And
and
once you
once you
apply
apply
yourself,
yourself,
you
you
can
can
actually
actually
become
become
a
a
good
good
expert.
expert.
Scope
Scope
of
of
financial
financial
services is
services is
actually
actually
huge.
huge.
I
I
think
think
sky
sky
is the
is the
limit,
limit,
or
or
I
I
would
would
say
say
sky
sky
is
is
not the
not the
limit.
limit.
Compensation
Compensation
also is
also is
actually
actually
extremely,
extremely,
attractive
attractive
compared
compared
to
to
a lot
a
of
lot of
other
other
sectors.
sectors.
Intellectual
Intellectual
challenge
challenge
and
and
job
job
satisfaction.
satisfaction.
Now,
Now,
this is
this is
where I
where I
think
think
sometimes
sometimes
it
it
becomes
becomes
challenging.
challenging.
Many
Many
jobs in
jobs in
finance
finance,
they are
they are
not
not
intellectually
intellectually
challenging.
challenging.
And
And
for
for
example,
example,
in
in
my
my
mind,
mind,
again,
again,
most of
most of
retail
retail
banking
banking
is
is
not
not
intellectually
intellectually
challenging.
challenging.
Corporate
Corporate
banking
banking
is
is
also
also,
not
not
as
as
well
well
challenging.
challenging.
Corporate
Corporate
banking
banking
is
is
mostly a
mostly a
relationship.
relationship.
I'm
I'm
just
just
talking
talking
about
about
banking.
banking.
Then
Then
fund
fund
management, I
management, I
think,
think,
is
is
really
really
challenging.
challenging.
Algorithmic
Algorithmic
trading,
trading,
analyzing the
analyzing the
market,
market,
equity
equity
research.
research.
Some of
So
these
these
areas are
areas are
actually
actually
quite
quite
challenging.
challenging.
But
And
quite a
quite a
lot of
lot of
these
these
challenging
challenging
areas are
areas are
actually
actually
slowly
slowly
going
going
away
away
from
from
human
human
intelligence to
intelligence to
machine
machine
intelligence,
intelligence,
as
as
you
you
would
would
see
see
over a
over a
period
period
of
of
time,
time,
things
things
will actually
actually
will
will
start.
start.
Growth in
Growth
the
in the
career,
career,
I
I
think
think
there is
there
a
is a
huge
huge
opportunity
opportunity
in
in
the
the
finance
finance
area.
area.
And
And
jobs
jobs
across the
across the
world.
world.
I've
I've
seen
seen
people,
people,
going
going
from
from
Citibank
Citibank
world
world
to
to
one
one
country
country
to
to
another
another
country
country
to
to
third
third
country,
country,
and
and
actually
actually
they
they
do
do
well
well
in the
in the
life,
life,
and
and
the
the
huge
huge
provides
provides
huge
huge
sort of
sort of
opportunities
opportunities
in
in
the
the
finance.
finance.
Now,
Now,
one of
one
the
of the
area
area
which
which
actually
actually
is
is
hugely
hugely
devoid of
devoid of
any
any
application
application
is
is the
research in
research in
finance,
finance,
in
in
academics and
academics
in
and in
practice.
practice.
Academic, of
Academic, of
course,
course,
I
I
think
think
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
that
that
in
in
our
our
country,
country,
any
any
or
or
in
in
India,
India,
any
any
research
research
is
is
actually
actually
in
in
progress
progress
when
when
it
it
comes
comes
to
to
finance.
finance.
Hardly
Hardly
any
any
research
research
is
is
in
in
progress
progress
actually
actually
because
because
the
the
institutions, the
institutions, the
financial
financial
institutions
institutions
are
are
not
not
doing
doing
any
any
research,
research,
nor
nor
they
they
have
have
any
any
encouragement for
encouragement for
research.
research.
They
They
spend
spend
enormous
enormous
amount of
amount of
money
money in
in doing
doing
whole
whole
lot of
lot of
things,
things,
but
but
when
when
it
it
comes
comes
to
to
creating a
creating a
team,
team,
that
that
okay,
okay,
start
start
looking
looking
at
at
some
some
of
of
the
the
new
new new instruments, new ways of serving customers, new ways of doing something different than what you are currently doing. I actually don't think that anybody in India, at least to the best of my knowledge, is actually putting time, effort, and budget for this kind of activity. Even again in the academics, if you look at barring few organizations in country, few academic institutions like maybe IIM Ahmedabad and one or two other IIMs, I actually don't think that maybe few dozen, 2 dozen people are doing their doctoral work in finance, but otherwise, I actually, when you look compared to what actually happens in the European and the North American countries, I think quite a lot of research work is going on in University of Chicago. If you look at, then you look at Harvard University, you look at NYU, look at Stanford, and look at many other universities where enormous amount of academic work is going on, and basic fundamental research is actually in progress. Mostly economics and then as applied to finance. Finance actually has been very more attractive prior to 2008 crisis, when there was a meltdown in the financial market. I think derivative transactions were actually hugely in the marketplace, but subsequent to 2008, when a lot of derivative transactions actually were leveraged and things were actually went wrong, and some people attribute to derivative transactions. So a lot of institutions pulled off from the derivatives. As a result, the attractive pay package which are actually being given to so-called star performers or analytical people actually have slightly reduced. But my own sense is that it will come back over a period of time in a slightly different way. Finance is slowly and surely becoming analytical and computational. So that's something which actually is happening. Okay, so then why learn mathematics when working in finance? The mathematics is language. I think I mentioned this. Just learning mathematics and some basic high-level programming is equally important and desirable. In my opinion, all students and working professionals who want to get into modern finance are advised to learn a computer language to study finance. I think it's important, and at whatever age you may be, actually, learning high-level computer language is not difficult at all. Syntax is easy, and whole lot of work is already done for you. You look at Python or look at R or look at many other, MATLAB or a lot of other languages which are now actually part of the so-called high-level language, which are actually you have to write syntax, one or two lines, and then you can actually get things done, provided you learn it and understand it, how the syntax is actually written. Excellent programming languages are available for free, and quite a lot of work is already done by somebody, and most of the computer work is actually available free in the R, Python, and there are enormous amount of tools, analytical tools, mathematical tools, statistical tools, are already built in for you, and they are available. Use of these tools make learning and applying mathematics to solve financial problems really easy, satisfying and fun. So this is something which actually I would very strongly recommend that you should seriously look at this. Very complex problems can be solved using few lines of code in R or in Python. So it's something which I think I sincerely encourage all the people to sort of look at this very sincerely, and there are a lot of good programs which are available to learn Python and R. So I will very strongly recommend for those who are looking for a good career in finance, surely I will encourage them to sincerely look at learning R or Python. Now if you look at this, finance is everywhere and is indeed an important part of everyday life. So now what I want to do is I would like to get into the financial services and see where all and how mathematics is actually important, and where it is actually being deployed, should be deployed, need to be deployed, must be deployed. So banking and financial services forms an important part of finance. So what happens in banking? So one of the very big area, most challenging area of banking is lending. Lending and its management mostly. Till the time money and the interest amount comes back, the lender is always keeping his fingers crossed and seeing whether the money is going to come back or not. So that analysis of lending, before the lending is done, and post lending, I think that's a very crucial part of banking, or for that matter any financial services. Because the relationship in banking or in financial services is the money changes hand from one hand to another hand, and when it happens, there is a whole lot of sort of variables come in the picture, and those variables need to be analyzed in a systematic manner with an objective which actually has to be very clearly understood, so that keeping that objective in mind, the problem can be modeled in a totally analytical manner and solution can be found. Both in corporate world and retail banking, retail world, the lending is actually important. Another area of management is the liquidity management. I think liquidity risk modeling is also actually quite important for the wholesale banking, for large corporations, for small corporations, even for families. I think liquidity management is an important part. So the liquidity management, the scenarios can be modeled very nicely, and then one can arrive at how to exactly address the liquidity under stress, under various stress and various scenarios. These are some of the things which actually models can help us or help people in the financial services significantly different way than the conventional techniques actually being used. Then the risk management, of course, I think is a very important service which actually is financial risk identification, measurement and control using analytical techniques. So these are all some of the things which actually are part of the financial services, which actually is important, and all these can be addressed very easily using some of the simple mathematical tools. If you look at now, financial mathematics is hugely interlinked. That is finance and mathematics. So here I have just put some of the things. Capital market, there are two big instruments in the capital market. One is equity, the other is debt. So here you are talking about bond or fixed income instruments, and then you are talking about derivatives, which are derivatives of the equity as well as of the debt. Derivatives, of course, I think are not very popular in our country when it comes to debt. Equity derivatives are, I think, futures and options are quite popular, and quite particularly the equity derivatives are somewhat popular actually. Now, where is the mathematics involved? Pricing. You can't do pricing without mathematics. Valuation, absolutely, and then trading. Trading, actually, you are trying to see exactly which is overpriced or underpriced, or how do you exactly trade, how long you hold the positions, and things like that. So this is where I think 40-50% algorithmic trading. Most of the algorithmic trading actually is now done using technical analysis, or some are doing AI and machine learning. But and you can also look at fundamental analysis. You can mix up the two exactly. So the trading also actually now is going quite analytical. Investment, the portfolio management, investments and quality, hedging. All these are actually part of the mathematical tools which are actually deployed. The risk, of course, is fully mathematical. So you can see in each block, there is enormous amount of mathematics which actually is deployed significantly, from low level to a high level to a very high level actually. So that's something which is actually an integral part of finance. Now, if you look at corporate world, corporate finance, financial activities related to running a corporation, raising capital through equity or debt offering. Now you have to do valuation, startup, capital from angel capital or venture capitalists, IPO, initial public offering. We are actually trying to value budgeting, balance sheet management, hedging to foreign exchange, interest rate exposures. All these are actually completely, quite a lot of them are actually mathematical, statistical, probabilistic, and distributional. So quite a lot of things are actually one is being applied, and those things are actually being applied. Leverage again is an important theme in finance, and the moment leverage actually happens, the risk obviously starts to go up, and because the leverage and actually risks are proportional. More the leverage, more the risk, and in many cases sometimes the proportional is not linear, it can become non-linear. So invariably the moment the risk comes, the mathematics actually will come in. Financial leverage is entities are financial leverage. How much leverage actually financial entity can leverage? We would like to mathematically calculate what is the optimal leverage, what is the best leverage we can do actually. Leverage in the balance sheet, leveraging the derivatives, risk and leverage, all that actually are. So these are all pertaining to leverage where actually the mathematical theme or quite a lot of mathematics actually can help us do a better decision. They're looking at equity market, debt market, interest rate dynamics, yield curve dynamic determination, money market, short-term borrowing and lending, commodity markets, oil, gold and other commodities, derivative markets actually, and derivative markets of course full of mathematics. So these are some of the activities in the wholesale market which are actually done in different ways. Again, looking at derivatives, debt, a variety of derivatives, huge role of mathematics, forward, futures, options, swaps, exotic derivatives, mortgage products, mortgage mathematics, and all that actually as part of it. We are going to do some of these actually as we go along. Where again some of the basic statistics and some advanced statistics also used in finances. So probability distributions. Normal distribution is extremely popular distribution in finance. I think as we know, all the asset prices or the returns on the asset prices are assumed to be normally distributed. And so that's where actually once you make that assumption that enormous tools which are available for normal distribution landscape, you can make available to the financial domain and you can apply some of those tricks to understand finance better. Log normal distribution is also important actually. Log normal distribution, all the asset classes, equity distribution, then you look at the commodity prices, look at bond prices, they're all supposed to be log normally distributed. Poisson process, binomial process, these are all some of the very simple or well-known distributions where these assumptions are made about how the financial variables actually can change their distribution actually you can assume one of these distributions depends upon the characteristic of the financial variable, and then the whole lot of apparatus which is now available for using statistics is made available in that particular sense. Basic calculus, mostly differential calculus, but some integral calculus is also part of financial application in the finance. Linear algebra and matrices, they also has been deployed. Ordinary and partial differential equations are also actually used, extensively used in financial calculation. Stochastic calculus is used. Ito's lemma, Ito's calculus, financial options, all the kind of contingent claims are part of the applications. Optimization is again a mathematical technique of arriving at the optimal combination of certain variables or optimal values, minimizing something or maximizing something. Monte Carlo simulations, where enough data is not available, one can do Monte Carlo simulations. And I think in one of the sessions we will discuss some of the Monte Carlo applications. And then we are looking at, let's take some examples, calculation of volatility for time series. You can see statistics. So how do you calculate the volatility? Volatility is nothing but standard deviation of returns. And standard deviation is nothing but a concept in finance people call it volatility, in mathematics we call it standard deviation. Beta. Now beta is nothing but statistical measure actually. So beta is nothing but variation of a particular stock with respect to the market. So we actually use correlation and covariance to calculate the beta. So that's where actually, so these are all totally statistical applications. Then portfolio selection, modern portfolio theory is a good example for optimization. Black-Scholes equation for option pricing, stochastic calculus, risk calculations, total statistics issues, credit risk modeling, statistics and stochastics differential equations, and market risk modeling, statistical probability theory. You can see very clearly how mathematics is actually, coming in a big way in finance. Now, this is an interesting slide I just created just to give you a sense of how financial services may change. This is my take on this. Financial services risk monitoring will become real time. It is now, as perhaps many of you might know, the risk management is actually offline, in the sense that the risk reports are produced in the evening, and it is more a post-mortem than anything else. But now slowly it is going to become real time, because that the technology and tools allow you to do that it actually is going to become real time. So that's one of the change which is likely to come. It will make huge difference in monitoring credit risk and market risk. If it becomes real time, then financial services scene will change dramatically with the introduction of AI and machine learning in finance. I think next few years you will see a huge change in financial services. Bank branches will reduce in future and will move from urban to rural India. Bank branches, I think branches actually are not serving very useful purpose, and these actually people who are not computer savvy only need to go to the branches, but otherwise I don't think the branches are actually. And also slowly a lot of services will be provided through internet, through online banking, so that need to go to branch actually will reduce quite a lot. ATMs also will reduce and online payment will intensify the number of ATMs because it costs a lot of money for banks to provide that service to their customers. So because if the cash is not needed, then an online payment once intensifies, ATM service will drop. Routine financial services become robotic. And why I am telling some of these things, because a lot of mathematics actually has gone into this before we actually saw this discipline actually is become robotic or become online or because it has to be driven by analytical processes. Routine financial services become robotic. My own sense is that entire retail banking will become computerized with loss of many jobs in this area, because retail banking is nothing but opening an account, keeping the money, savings deposit, fixed deposit, small loans, retail loan, consumer loan, housing loan. All this actually slowly will become computerized, and people actually can access from their home or from their offices or from anywhere actually through their mobile. They'll be able to do quite well actually. With AI and machine learning, all mundane work, that means where lot of neural activities are actually don't really are taking place, that will become fully computerized and slowly become robotic. Fund management is also most likely to become computerized actually. So computerized. Algorithmic trading is already widespread and it will become a norm actually in the industry. So this is what I have to talk to you today. This is thanks for your participation, and then we'll start the actual course next week. But if you have any questions which I can answer, let me just open the line and see if actually anybody has any questions which actually. Yeah. So anybody has any question which I can answer, I'll be quite happy to.
Thanks, Mr. Mehta. This was quite useful. Just wanted to know that for the entire course, would be accessible the recordings for the sessions?
What we have will be available for some time. Yes. Right.
Thank you.
Please, I request all the participants that to interact so that I can actually any comments you would like to give, because today I just thought I just give an introductory discussion on different financial services, because I think it's a very vast area, and I don't think any amount of talking I can do justice of the subject matter, but I will try and focus myself into certain key areas so that I can actually at least make some of the key areas understand well. So
sorry to interrupt. I have two questions. One is, you have mentioned about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Do you also teach both these?
I teach this.
Okay, and if we can get more details, that would be useful.
I actually, let me give a little bit background. 2015, SPGN contacted us, that is my company, and in particular me. We would like to collaborate with us to start a course on AI and machine learning. And we designed the entire course for them, and we delivered the entire course. So the total academic responsibility was ours, and they would look after the complete infrastructure and marketing, and we did the complete teaching in the class. So it was a 6-month full-time course which we actually fully supervised, and we delivered the entire course actually. It was I think roughly about 400 to 500 hours course. So teachers actually they ran it for 3 years and then gave it back to SPJ.
Any plans to revive these course for online?
Courses are already going on now. The course I think SPJ is now delivering without our help. But so we set up the entire course and they are actually they are working on it and they are doing it. I'm not in on the in discussion with them right now because I had a contract for around 2 3 years and then I finished it and then we just discontinued and they are now doing it. So I actually believe that I can say quite confidently that this is the first time that an educational institute is getting in touch with a company and ask the company to deliver the entire course. I don't know any other course which actually in any university in the country which has been done like this.
Right.
So quite happy about that. Yeah.
And one more question, you have mentioned about many statistical techniques and other. So while we are online, are you going to write down anything on the whiteboard or it
I will
will
also
be
use
more?
whiteboard, absolutely. I'm going to take this course entirely conceptually. So I would actually suggest that, and I'm going to put, as much mathematical rigor as you can perhaps digest. So, and I just want to make sure students are actually, I take all of them along with me so that I don't miss out anybody. And it's important so that, some of these concepts will remain forever actually with you. Because, it's all very basic concepts and some of this deployment of mathematics is natural without which I actually don't know how. I mean, I'm really surprised how even finance can be done without mathematics actually. People, without really, some minimum mathematical background, getting into finance is actually somewhat, to me it is disappointing actually. Yeah, but I have had enormous teaching experience in many countries. I have taught in 22 countries worldwide. And I think story is very similar everywhere actually because, people come to finance in different backgrounds and they sit in finance class with a lot of non-mathematical background and they find it easy. The basic finance is of course easy, yes. But when you go into more detail, then it has to become analytical actually. I mean, today if you ask me frankly, non-analytical subjects also are becoming analytical actually. If you ask me frankly, entire social science is being driven by AI and machine learning. Entire social sciences. So the conventional subject which had no scope for any AI or machine learning or mathematics or analytics now becoming analytical actually. So I think the proliferation of the computing technique and the rate at which the computer are providing speeds in terms of its computational capabilities and the relative cheapness which is the computing power is available, and now with the cloud computing and algorithmics which are actually coming on the other side like AI and machine learning, it is making many applications possible which were not possible at all for several years or decades ago. Absolutely. And then enormous transformation is likely to take place. Unfortunately, in our country, the financial sector, my own view is quite interesting. I want to make this statement here that wherever there are any services which are actually driven by people, and financial services quite people driven, changing their mindset is not easy. So anything you want to apply new in the services, it becomes extremely challenging. Extremely challenging, and that is why a lot of new technology have not come still in the finance. If you look at, there are a lot of simple things which are actually available, but still not deployed. I don't know why. Yeah, please feel free to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the answer.
Dr. Mehta, we also covered the volatility and time series. Would be covering that those topics in the course as well?
Yeah. I'm going to cover the volatility and time series, little bit time series analysis. Also, I will request. I have written my email ID. So if I may request, if some people are actually looking for some specific topics they want to be covered, and I find that if there is a possibility of covering it, I'll be quite happy to cover it actually. Let me just see exactly if I can. Actually, my email ID is there with you, or I just let me just give you my email ID here. You can see the screen, no?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my email ID. You can actually send a mail to me or to Muskan. And if anything you want me to cover in particular, and I find that the time permits, I'll be quite happy to cover that in the course. Feel free to give me your suggestions, absolutely, and I will do my best to cover that particular aspect. But I want to keep this quite mathematically oriented, so that the purpose of the course is that to inculcate interest in mathematics and a lot of mathematical tools. How many people are familiar with any programming language? Of course, I'm going to use mostly Excel here, because I presume Excel is well known and everybody uses it some way or the other. I think most finance people, they find Excel as one of the best tool, and I think I'm sure the basic calculation can be done with Excel. But Excel has limitations when the data becomes massive, and quite a lot of equations to be solved, and Excel is not a good tool. Then you have to naturally go to the programming language. So I will also use one or two programming languages to show you. I use maybe R to show you exactly how this programming language is easy to apply, and how it's a very powerful language, enormously powerful language, which actually can solve very complex problems in seconds. So, yeah. There are some questions here. One second. Varsha, the recommended reading, unfortunately, very few books are written on finance and mathematics. Some of the books which are there are very, very high level, and I know Ingersoll has written a book, Theory of Financial Decision Making, which is very, very difficult to read. It's a doctoral level book, but otherwise, basic finance. Let me see if I can come across something. I will write to you. But there are few books. I have a book which you may find it interesting. Let me just try and see if I can actually get a copy of that book. Actually, I think that book should be good. I don't remember the title of the book, but I think I do refer to that book. Refer to that few years ago. I think new edition also must have come. But otherwise, no, I don't see it. I think those of you are oriented in derivatives and those things, actually there is a book by, I think, John Hull, which is also quite mathematical. One can look at John Hull. John Hull also is a very good book, actually. Yeah. So anybody has any other thought which I can answer? Otherwise we will close today, and we will start next Saturday at 6 o'clock, and we will build the complete theme of the painting. So we will start with the basic and then go further into more detail.
Doctor, hi. This is Vivek here. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. So good to hear you and see this lovely compilation of thought.
I actually, you won't believe, I have not taken any item from anywhere.
I know that.
It actually, everything is my own thoughts.
Absolutely.
And I have been working on this for some time. Unfortunately, I got stuck in Boston for the COVID period.
Right.
And I had plenty of time to myself.
Sure.
like a lot of many people actually who got stuck at home, and many people I found that they were getting bored, but I quite enjoyed what happened.
Sure, sure. I think one of the good things about, I mean, to do this is to keep the mind engaged. Otherwise, it just
Absolutely, I think the mind should always be engaged. I see that as long as you're living, yes, absolutely, without doubt, because that's one of the God gift to the humans. Yeah.
right. So for the part of the course, do we need to organize any data, or will we be
I will share all the data. I've got access to enormous amount of data myself.
Sure.
So I will actually get the data. I would actually expect a lot of assignments. I want to discuss some assignments, and I would actually expect maybe 2 hours of weekly work, 1 or 2 hours of weekly work.
Sure. We are willing to.
I'll appreciate that because
Yes.
that's where I think learning really can
Sure,
and it
absolutely,
becomes more really useful and rich. So that's something which I will sincerely request all the participants to ensure that happens. Because the more you interact, the more I get excited of doing things which actually, and I go really out of the way to see that if I can
Sure.
do a good job.
Connect.
I think Varsa writes that math scares me. Please give me a buddy for the homework. No, I will actually, Varsa, don't worry about mathematics. Believe me, it's very logical, and I will make it happen so that you can start doing it yourself. That I think if you just put your mind to it and be sincere, in trying things, you will find it